Welcome back. I am the Watcher, and today I'm dressed like Morpheus. Why? Well, because I wanted to ask you, which one of us is the dreamer, and which one of us simply lives within the other one's dream? Well, while you ponder on that, I got a really interesting book for you today. Lai Wan, the Dreamwalker. Now, a few trigger warnings for this book. It deals with murder, some sexual content, a little bit of Catholic repression, so if any of that stuff you don't want to hear about, may tune in next week when we do Team America number 2. I gotta tell you, I'm really looking forward to doing more of the Team America books, and this one will be introducing 2 more members of the Team America cast and crew. But this week, we have something a little more interesting and a little more thought-provoking. So without further ado, let's get to it. Alright, here we are. So once again this week, I have some burns on my left hand from the tattoo removal I'm going through. I'm going to try to keep the back of my hand covered or off camera. And I just feel like I owe you an explanation as the audience, because it will look kind of odd from your perspective. Now, a few things you might notice right off the bat. I thought she kind of looked like Lucy Liu. More in the book, not as much here. She looks kind of dead there. And this symbolism, I tell you, it ties heavily into the comic. I love when the cover art actually has to do with the comic. It's like a movie poster. It better sum up pretty good what's in there. It's her putting herself in the place of the people she's trying to help. Now, you will notice this weird green coat she has. For the first half, I thought it was like Bruce Willis in Unbreakable. And he had like, that green poncho, that rain poncho thing. But later on, you see some seams on it. I think it might be like a silk robe, because she is like this like mystic. Now, this comic was brought to you by Moonstone Productions, which this is the first I've heard of them, really. And it was made by C.J. Henderson, Sean McGaughan, and Chad Hunt. And then on the back you have these cool ads for some other comics. And the ads, you'll see in a minute, are one of the first things that stand out to me in this comic as being really different and less predatory than other ones. And I mean, I just love this presentation. It got me excited they had the Phantom. I was like, what? I gotta get some of those. The Gray Ghost, as Batman used to call him. So another thing that stands out to me really soon on is there's really good printing quality on it. This is a really thick paper. It's very glossy. It's not cheap newsprint. They really want this to last. And there is some damage to the cover you might be able to see, but that is 100% old damage. I think someone had a notebook on it, it kind of looks like. I found this book at a yard sale, and I put them in sleeves, and they literally sat in my bookshelf for years until I did this channel and decided to do it. I mean, like, literally, I found these back in, I think it was like 2015, 16. And I really wasn't into comics at the time, but I recognized it as good art. Never pawed through it, but took it. Alright, so your first page is talking about the story. It's not a big ad. It's not some kid munching cookies. It's not pizza. It's not them plugging other books. And I will have a few criticisms about this, and this is the first page. Now, for the first few pages, I assume because they're trying to give it like that noir feel, they're trying to give it that like washed out film look of dark and gritty. But the thing is, he's in a brightly lit conference room, and he kind of changes tone. Like right there, he's kind of dark. There's some panels where he straight up looks black with red hair. But that's only for the first 3 pages or so, and it just makes me wonder if they're having some trouble with coloring that they resolved, this being the first issue. I know sometimes when I'd make a character for the first time I'm coloring something, certain tones change. You might use like a different yellow or something and change it without realizing, and then be like, oh, the very first image I drew of her, I used a different tone of yellow. But there's really not too many criticisms to have about this book for it. I mean, it's a really good comic. I wish more comics were this quality, honestly. I mean, this page, you can't feel it, but I assure you, it's very thick. It's starchy. So it starts off in this press conference, and this detective guy here, he's talking about how the police have recognized that there's a murder spree going on. There's been 9 victims so far, and you have some really great artwork. Like, you have this Like the police, I mean, like, do I really even have to explain that symbolism right there? He's talking about how he's pretty much, the killer's toying with them. He's only killed women, of course. Yeah, I'm going to stop right here. When I was a kid, I loved Forensic Files. I grew up watching that shit. One thing that really disturbed me was how the majority of the episodes were about women and children being victimized. People who had no fighting chance. And keep in mind, I was like 5 or 6 when this happened, but I realized, like, people don't fight fair. It's not like Dragon Ball. They don't go square up with some dude and beat the crap out of each other till they're satisfied. Like, no, they victimize people. They pick on people for the most low down and disgusting reasons. And that's one of the first times I remember being disgusted with humanity. And that's a bit of what you have going on here, is you have some man just murdering the shit out of women. Detective, oh, here's that panel. See where he looks black, almost. And then right there, he looks completely different. Like the tone, he has 3 different tones on this page. But it ends after this page. They even it out, so. I mean, the book I just came out with, I accidentally painted one. The cat's a little too orange, you know? It happens. So these are the faces of the murderers. This is what they think the killer looks like, which is pretty spot on. And he's just explaining that, and then it ends with questions, and everyone throws their hands up. And it cuts to here. And this detective, he has this guy telling him that there's someone here to talk to him. You know, they're looking through the slats, and I mean, this is beautifully drawn. Very high detail. This is a very good comic. Although his face looks a little funny right there. He's like, he looks like some sort of ventriloquist dummy. Like his name's Chippy. And they're talking about how they're going to catch this guy, how they're going to bring him in. Maybe he'll start making mistakes and whatnot. As he does more, it's like, well, I have someone for you to meet. And that's where you're introduced to Lai Wan. By the way, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing her name. I have a lot of trouble with vowel clusters in all languages. So if my pronunciation's a bit off, well, you could try to let me know in the comments, but if I'm not reading it right here, how am I going to read it right out of a comment, you know? How do you write Chinese phonetically? Anyways, so this episode is called Passion and Justice. And I'm going to say right now, she starts off a little smug. You know, have you ever watched Dexter? I love that show. I love more the first few seasons, you know, with Delks and all that. Surprise, motherfucker. Anyways, you know, Dexter, I mean, again, I like the show. This is a criticism coming from someone that enjoyed it. I hated how up his own ass he was all the time, just like... And I get that's the character, but just the monologues, like, constantly. And that's a bit what she sounds like, just that she's kind of superior, she knows better and whatnot. Which, I mean, if you're a super powerful being, I guess you do. You know, I didn't notice this the first time, but she's sitting on a stack of towels. Why is she sitting on a stack of towels? Did she request the towels? They don't talk about why does she have the towels? This is going to drive me nuts now. So she's like, I'm here to help you. And he's being dismissive of her for literally no reason, just because she's a dame, I guess. Oh, and these little parts are her talking in her head. So, like, he'll say stuff to her, like right here. What wonderful woman's organization is stepping forward to do our jobs for us now. And she thinks to herself, I could feel the man's anger from the other side of the door. He is tired, frustrated, looking to lash out. And I'm feeling much the same way. But that hardly matters to him. And that's probably like the best thing she says, because she just keeps going on like that. Like, he's seeing his anger there will cost him. As those he wounded with truth will retaliate with bitterness and lies. And it's all just stuff like that. Like, okay, I get it. To me, it's like, okay, you're sitting there in a raincoat. I don't need to be mystified by you, is how I feel. But that is the theme of the book, so I guess you should kind of... So, he's getting mad with her now. He's like, excuse me? And she's like, I will speak and you will listen. I apologize for not being able to tolerate listening to you any longer. But your lack of understanding is simply wasting my time. And keep in mind, she hasn't explained much to him. And he's like I have time for this. Jensen, get this bitch out of here. And she's talking about her names in different ethnic neighborhoods. She has, like, little nicknames in all of them. Stuff like Shadow Walker, Dream Stepper, that kind of thing. Walker in Dreams. Do you get out of Queens? In the Hindu section especially, where they speak of the eyes of God. Oh my Christ, you're spooky, Mary. And then she's like, Mother Voodoo, Second Sight Sarah. Or my personal favorite, the one that shows so very clearly the developmental powers of most New Yorkers, that scary bullshit chick. Should I have brought my resume? Which, that part's a little funny, I'll admit. She's got these gloves on, she's taking them off. And he's doubting her, and she's like, oh yeah, well, just touch me. Just come on, reach out and touch faith. And, he does, and they immediately start getting swept back, and I love this smoke effect. I love how they do this. And she's walking him through this memory. And he's a little kid, he's on the baseball team. You have that really creepy looking priest there. So, yeah, I'm just gonna say it now. My mind immediately went to, this guy's gonna get molested, and that's why he became a cop. I was wrong. I'm gonna say now, I was wrong. So he hits the home run. Everyone's happy for him. And this guy completely blocked it out. He's like, I don't remember this. But yeah, this was awesome. They're all cheering for him. They put him on his shoulders. They're trouncing him around. And then these guys, they just turn on him. Like they have this look. And I didn't understand what happened. And look, now they're just pissed at him for some reason. And, I reread this like 3 times and I didn't get it. I will say they reveal what happens later in the story. Like, they directly say it, but it doesn't come across right here, is especially where I went back and read. So he just has this helmet. He's clinging onto it. And there's like, oh, I see. And the other kids are laughing at him, and they're getting rid of him. And this nun comes up to try to, like, I don't know what her plan was, but he reaches for her and goes, sister, and she just smacks him, and he turns back to an adult for a minute. Oh, look, I didn't notice that before. So the child and the detective have switched places. That's beautiful. And, just keep that in your mind. Keep that in your mind throughout this whole thing. A funny joke I forgot to mention before. He's like, yeah, whatever, you can dive in my mind. Could you tell me my mother's birthday? And they get out, and the first thing she tells them is July 17th. Is that correct, Captain? He's like, oh, what? It's like, I said July 17th, your mother's birthday, remember? He's like, what? And the guy's like, Chief, are you okay? Yeah, of course. Because she made him very emotionally uncomfortable. She said, here's a door you haven't opened in a while. She went into like a very repressed part of his mind. And something feels like it's left out, but it's going to be horrible, right? It's going to be absolutely horrible what happened to this guy. So now he's like, what do you want? Why are you doing this? He's like, I'm not going to use this to give you free publicity. And she's like, I don't want publicity. It is better I work in the shadows, and that I am a mystery and a legend, and spoken of only in whispers. That's not what she says verbatim, but it's to that effect, He's like, oh, well, now I trust her because she's not just looking for money or fame. Like, she literally wants nothing. She's like, my motives for doing this are personal. Like, I have these powers, and I interfere when I feel I need to. He's like, you're serious, aren't you? And she's like, yes, Captain. And she has her head out, showing that she's more, like, open to him now. Oh, here we go. You have heard of me only in whispers, for that is the way I prefer it. See, that's what I was telling you. Like, she immediately gets to that. So he's just like... So he's like, all right, I'm in. So what do you need to get started? And next scene, they're in the morgue. Here's one of the victims. I think it's the latest victim. And they tell the guy, give us 15 minutes. And he's like, take 20. I'm 2 cigarette breaks behind. He goes, he has him a smoke while he leaves these people alone with the body, and she does that. Like, imagine just walking out of the room and you hear, whoa. And so here she is in this, like, temporal dream void, and she's like, Susan, come talk to me. Susan, tell me who did this to you. And she just kind of, like, creepily points, and there's this warrior there, this, like, clad armor warrior. He kind of looks like the character Dexter wanted to be in the Monsters and Maces episodes of Dexter's Laboratory, before Dee Dee made him be a hobbit. And then it just skips, and he's talking about how she doesn't know what any of this means. It's kind of weird. They've touched a few victims now, and it's all the same thing, like this vestige of this warrior. And she's like, I don't understand what the commonality is that is combining all these cases. And this Jensen guy, he just offhandedly says, well, they all had a computer, or something to that effect. Like, the only thing linking them is they all had a computer. And that's it. I'd also like to take a moment to stop and point out they're actually depicting smoking in here. This, of course, is an adult comic, but still, you see smoking stripped out of media a lot these days. I don't know. I mean, I'm personally not a cigarette smoker, but I like it when stuff feels genuine and real, and this helps it feel real to me. So she goes, and she's going through the computers, and she just, she gets thrown into another one of these hellscapes. Just all the victims, and there's that guy sitting there. It's like the mask of a monster. And isn't there one of those times, it just kind of skips. And here she's talking about, kind of as it's going in, as they're busting in, why he was doing it. And I couldn't tell if they were arguing online or if they were playing a video game. Just refers to him as a keyboard warrior. That's why I assumed chatting online angrily, but I don't see it working that way. I see, like, if they were in a game and they respected each other happening, but pretty much he would argue or fight with these people somehow online. And then he would convince them to go to dinner with them. And then he would rape and murder them. This guy, and he looks exactly like the guests they had. You know, he looks like he kind of smells bad. He's eating a sandwich. I'd like to point out here, too, he has swords hung on the wall with handcuffs. Don't know what you're planning to do with that. It's weird. Like, his apartment, it's got a bunch of fantasy crap in it. More reasons I thought it was like a video game. But yeah, that's pretty much what was happening. Is this guy was targeting people he enjoyed fighting online, and then he would murder them in life and rape them and kill them. Kind of a piece of shit, you know? And they're trying to arrest him. He's like, you fucks don't have dick on me. And he's like, oh yeah, well, I'm gonna have my dick on you. Bend over. No, that's just a joke. He's like, you're already stopped, or hadn't you noticed? And then Lai Wan comes in and she's like, no, you are wrong, Lieutenant. You and your men cannot defeat a warrior such as this. And that's the thing, she uses the term warrior loosely. She also calls a detective a warrior for justice, you know? And this is pretty true, and I feel this especially with a lot of school shooters. This thing has no fear of incarceration. A trial, his name in the papers, these are what he has been living for. And she's talking about how pretty much he's rehearsed it. He's living up, he wants to be a pariah and have people reveal and be disgusted by him. And yeah, that is a lot of people's motives behind crimes. And I don't know, I'm always conflicted personally. It's like, do we talk about these things so we can understand them and control them? Or should we bury them and hide them? Or at least hide the person's identity so they don't get fame for it? Because that's really what they want. And it's a very complex question of how to stop this disgusting part of humanity. Like, so many school shooters, that is their motive. And I know it's a very serious thing to have to deal with. And I sadly, I don't think it's part of our psychology we're going to be rid of anytime soon. But she has a different punishment in mind for him, because she doesn't feel the courts will really serve justice and that he's just going to get what he wants. So she touches him, and he's like Lai Wan on the cover. There's his victims rising up and tearing him down. And she pulls out this thing. And she's like, I made this creature, with your help, of course. And she gets pissed and starts shoving it down his throat. Like, he was born of the pain you gave so freely, spawned by your devil's anger. Do you recognize the taste of him? It is the gagging tang of every wound you have ever given, every sting of every harsh word of pain ever blown, every slightest indignity you have ever visited upon another. You shall suffer, all of them, together. And it's crawling down his throat. It's choking him endlessly. Thus, only thus, shall your crimes be avenged, and justice be served. And he's being dragged down into the dirt and shit, and I really like this. But here's my main criticism about it. Very next page is back to the detective talking about what a good job they did. So I went back and read this. I thought 2 pages stuck together. Did they still take him to jail? Did he wind up psychologically broken and in a hospital? Did he just dissolve into nothingness like Thanos snapped his fingers and his soul will be tormented for all time? Well, they don't tell you. They just skip and it's like, oh, good job, justice served. And it goes back to Lai Wan and she's revisiting this memory with the captain. She looks nice now. She's got a nice little sundress. She's like, oh, it's a good memory. I can see why you would want to come here. And now you find out what happened to him. Okay, so she's telling him, and this is where the book bothers me. She's just like, what you felt so many years ago, that simple moment, a boy's first erection. That's what it was about. He got a stiffy. So I stopped there. I went back. So I went back because I was like, wait, what happened? He got a stiffy, right? And yeah, they pick him up. He's on their shoulders, which they're rubbing him. He's excited, I guess. And these people somehow just immediately know he has an erection. And that's what it is. Like, they're mad because they're Catholic and he has an erection. And the nun goes up to touch him, I guess, because he has a boner. But it bothers her, so she slaps him. And that's what it was. He got so excited that he won the baseball game, or maybe that he was just rubbing the back of that kid's head with his Johnny, that he got a stiffy, and they embarrassed him in front of everybody. Because he had such a massive stiffy that he had to hide it with his helmet. Now, I think South Park covered this good in the episode where Jimmy tries to get a prostitute. He's very self-conscious about his erections, but honestly, no one could tell. But in his mind, it's like this big obvious thing, right? And that I love that conclusion. He gets the prostitute, he has sex with her so he can do the comedy show, and then he goes up there and immediately gets an erection either way. Like, that's how it is when you're a young boy. You can't even hear the word erection, boner, like it just starts, like it just immediately turns on. It's like a hair trigger. So that's what happened, is he got a boner. What you felt so many years ago, that simple moment, a boy's first erection made into something terrible by small minds and fear that grows there. I felt when we shared this space, all the embarrassment, all the humiliation. I experienced it as you did. I experienced every human emotion this way. And this guy, he literally says, I think this is why I became a cop. Isn't that silly? And yeah, it is. You got a boner in front of people and felt embarrassed is a ridiculous reason to become a cop. I thought something horrible happened to you. You got molested. You wanted to get justice. No, I got really excited at a baseball game and popped a stiffy. And I felt bad and I became a cop. And now I'm wondering if this guy's going to be a recurring character, because I'm not going to be able to ever take him seriously. That's all I'm going to fucking think about. You got a stiffy at a baseball game, and that's the defining factor in your life. Also, he's kind of old. Like, that's your first stiffy? Like, you know, like, from my understanding, how it was with me, you get them for years, you don't even understand what it is. So, you know, weird. Like, you get your first stiffy, and it's just like, boing, in front of everyone. So yeah, that's where this book goes. After all that serious content, there's like, you got a stiffy at the baseball game. And then it goes to her alone in her apartment crying over this photo, which, I mean, it looks kind of weird and off-putting, but that's the thing, like, kids are really bad at taking photos. So it's genuine to me. She's wearing gloves because she don't want to remember it. And, I don't know, something happened to this child and it made her sad. And I'm hoping it gets addressed in later episodes. And this is one thing that stood out to me was the ads. You may have noticed. The first thing had to do with the story. It was completely the story. They're talking about the next story. And this book, which, I mean, the art was a little, took me a while to figure out that was a woman's butt cheek, but I don't know, it looks like concerning, but also like it could be really good. And then the last pages of this book are really just talking about the story and even talking about some other books they have, which some of these, Call of the Wild, just the name alone interests me. I mean, I really don't like that face there. I think it's a skunk. But just if you've read the book Call of the Wild, interests me. You have Tales of Cthulhu, occult detective stories. This one looked really, just the art on it looked like something your stoned uncle has on a piece of fabric hanging over the couch in the garage where he smokes weed. listens to some BOC, little Blue Oyster Cult. You have this cool one for the samurai. I assume he's in the Court of the Three Musketeers. And it is a Dark Horse publication, which, you know, I'm just going to take a chance to say this now. I'm not the biggest fan of Dark Horse. And the reason for it, Predator 2, stuff like that, is because I feel they like to buy up other franchises and then use them. They don't really make that much original content. And then, I'm a big fan of Conan the Barbarian. Dark Horse Comics makes it hard to find the Conan I enjoy because their shit is a little more relevant and new. And just everything's like that. And I mean, the artists are good, but I don't care for the designs. I don't like what you did with this world that I'm really into. It's like if you're a Star Wars fan, you know, you grew up with New Hope and all that, just going straight from that to like the Acolyte. If you like it, I'd be surprised, you know? And I'm not saying they're not good. They're not very professional or well made. It's just not my cup of tea. And you probably won't see me do a lot of Dark Horse comics on this channel. Although this one is interesting me. You got Buckaroo Banzai, A Final Comeback in Color, which that guy, you know, he's got samurai sword, a guitar, and a gun. I don't know what he's prepared for, but he's prepared for it. I love this guy's face. He's like, hey, is that my sword? I knew I shouldn't have let you stay in my den, you bum. Kind of looks like a David Hasselhoff, like an idealized David Hasselhoff. You know, if they got the Hoff, definitely read it. Then you had, I got so excited when I seen this one, The Phantom Legacy. I was like, definitely getting that. Just, this is what I'm talking about. They put all the ads in the back, and they look really good. It doesn't take away from the story at all. And I love that. It's very considerate to the reader. It also makes it so you can skip it. And then a few ads for a few other books. One is Lai Wan. There's also this cool looking Cisco Kid one and Wyatt Earp. I mean, there's a lot. Pretty much everything I seen in an ad in here I wanted to buy. Makes it a good ad. Well, that's been Lai Wan, and I gotta tell you, I love this book. I would really enjoy to hear your thoughts on it because, I don't know, I've heard my thoughts. I would like some other opinions. I've never heard anyone in my whole life talk about this book or this publication company. And I wanted to bring you something a little different today. But without any further ado, let's get to the final thoughts. What? I wasn't going to keep it on for the whole review. I'll keep this on. I kind of like dressing up. Before, I was always dressing in my house clothes because this is a moment of comfort for me, and I wanted to share that with you. But I also like having an excuse to dress up. I just got a big lot of Spirit comics that I plan to review soon. I was going to get one of those sick, thin ties. You know, dress up like a detective for those ones. Going to be a lot of fun. But for today's detective story, Lai Wan, this book definitely wasn't what I was expecting. If I had any criticisms of it, it would just be some of the pacing is kind of like, you know, you spend so much time talking and then you skip over parts I want to see. And there was more than a few times where I had to go back and reread the page because I felt like I missed something or I thought two pages might have stuck together. I do think it's a really good story. I think it might have been a little bit better as a TV series. What really impressed me was the quality of print in the book. It definitely wasn't what I was expecting, and it got me wanting to read more. Like I said, I have one more of these, and I do plan to do it, maybe around Halloween. But it's definitely a very good series, and I'm wondering why I haven't heard more about it. I would be interested in collecting more of them. Now, as for my power scaling, I don't think Lai Wan could beat Captain Planet. She might send him on an interesting trip, but he's such a, he's such a noble, good, Dudley Do-Right. I don't see him having anything festering in his mind for her to extort. In fact, I don't even know if he's human. I always thought he was some sort of spiritual entity created by Gaia. Now, either way, this is certainly a slightly unconventional and I feel really good story. And the people who wrote this, I feel, were a bit passionate about it. I don't feel like this was made for money. I felt like this was made because someone wanted to have it made, and they tried very hard to get their thing brought to publication. It's definitely one I appreciated, but, I love a good detective story any day of the week. Well, thank you for spending your time with me today. I hope you enjoyed the video. And until next time, remember, you are indeed the dreamer.